Yo, this is Terrance Gaines, aka Brother Tech,
And this is Nica Montford, aka Tech Savvy Diva.
and welcome back to the Snob OS Show, the show for Apple snobs, where we talk all things Apple and then some. Definitely want to welcome you back to the latest episode. This is episode 220 of the Snob OS Show. So we definitely again want to thank you for hanging in there for this long. We definitely want to thank our supporters. We definitely want to thank our paid supporters. Again, those are the people that keep the lights on. So we definitely want to thank them for their support. We just got done recording the Snobist episode. That is our exclusive content specifically for our Patreon supporters. If you want to be a Patreon supporter, please go to patreon.com/snoboscast. You can become a paid supporter and get access to exclusive content and get exclusive content early because we are recording this show a day or two early before it airs live. So if you want to get the show early, you definitely can become a Patreon supporter and get that content before everybody else. So having said all that, we're going to get right into the show. We always start with the lowdown where we talk all things Apple, and it looks like Apple is putting more of its money where its mouth is as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It looks like, according to this story in Culta Mac, Apple adds another 25 million to its racial equity and justice initiatives. The Racial Equity and Justice Initiative launched in 2020, of course, shortly after the murder of George Floyd. A lot of companies kind of, decided to support, but since then, kind of been mum's the word for a lot of these
Mhm.
companies. It looks like, with the exception of Apple, take this quote directly from Tim Cook: building a more just and equitable world is urgent work that demands collaboration, commitment, and a common sense of purpose, said Tim Cook. We are proud to partner with many extraordinary organizations that are dedicated to addressing injustice and eliminating barriers to opportunity, and will continue to lead with our values as we expand our efforts to create opportunities, lift up communities, and help build a better future for all. It looks like some of the grants or some of the benefactors of this REJI education grants include over 50 million to historically Black colleges and universities and Hispanic serving institutions. So just wanted to put that news out there that it seems like Apple is continuing its charge, where you could argue some other companies have kind of said, enough of that. So just wanted to get your take on, Apple's initiatives, the fact that Tim Cook has come out and identifies as gay. So you could say he's part of a minority. So maybe he kind of sides and understands the
Mhm.
need to continue to support. Or do you think, even though they are continuing their support, this could still be considered a write off, a tax write off? Or do you feel that Apple is really, wants to continue the fight for, DEI?
So, in the climate where DE&I is a swear word to some people and where people are pulling money back, they're putting money into it. So, a couple of things. I think they were very smart not to call their initiatives
Yeah, that's
DE&I.
true. Right,
They
right.
call it racial equity and justice.
Mhm,
So their REJI
mhm,
situation gives them a little bit of a differentiator, even though it's essentially the same thing. But
mhm,
again, in this climate and with the way some people are behaving, like I said, DEI is a swear word. It's the worst word, in the history of the world. So I think because Tim is in an underrepresented group, sure, that could play into it. But honestly, at the end of the day, it comes down to dollars and cents. Apple has a truckload of money. So it
mhm,
doesn't do them any harm to not continue to put money in this, especially when it makes them look really good to a large population of the people. It's a
mhm,
win win for them. They have the money and it makes them look good, especially when everybody else is pulling back. So it's a win win for the people that it's going to impact positively. It's a win for the company itself. And ultimately, it's a win for our society because when you put money and effort behind supporting people who are in underrepresented groups, it helps society. It's not as if, some of these folks don't have the capacity to do this work. And when I say this work, meaning in technology, they just don't have the resources, the know how, or the backing. So the more people are involved in this, the better products become. So again, it's a win-win all around for everybody, including this company.
All right, all right. So we will see. Like you mentioned, Apple does have a truckload of money. This story I didn't put in here, but it seems like Apple is knocking on the door of becoming a 3 trillion,
Jesus
uh
Christ.
yeah, valued at $3 trillion, which I think um puts already they're already at the number one most valuable American company, if not
Mhm.
global
Global. Mhm.
company. So $25 million, we appreciate it. That passes the total of 200 million in
Mhm.
this racial equity and justice initiative. So, it's a drop in the bucket as far as
For
3
them,
trillion. But at the same time, that's way more than some of these other companies who, may not be 3 trillion, but they making billions of dollars,
yeah.
and the fact that they're kind of saying, isn't that
It's
enough?
okay. We forgot about the
Yeah.
black squares, right? No
you
one's
know,
talking about that anymore, right? Yeah.
comparatively speaking, Apple is, continuing on in the fight for, racial
Yeah.
justice.
Because they could not give any more money. They could just keep going with the initiatives they already have, which is quite a
hmm
few, but they're like up in the ante. Let's put some more money into it. Let's make some of the other guys look kind of bad.
hmm Yep. All right. So the next story, it seems like now you can now cuss on the iPhone.
Yes.
It seems like there has been a recent update to Apple iPhones to where when you go in and try to type in a cuss word, the iPhone wants to very, 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 very badly to autocorrect that to something more appropriate.
Palatable.
Right. People who are trying to type cuss words into the iPhone don't really care about it being appropriate or not, because that's the whole point of putting it in
That's
there
the
to
point.
add some extra emphasis on the comments.
A
So,
little spice, if you will.
App right. Apple has always wanted to be one of those, nice companies. There is a report. I don't know if this is true or not, but which is ridiculous, but it sounds like something Apple would do, to where in movies, none of the villains in the movie, Apple has a law to where none of them can have iPhones. So you think of the good guy, yeah, you think of the hero, you think of the police or the FBI or whatever government organization is chasing down these villains. They
Mhm.
all can have the iPhones and the iPads and the app and the MacBooks or whatever. But the villains, I heard, or there was a report to the Apple, that is a hard fast rule that none of the villains in any movies are allowed to be using iPhones or Apple products to conduct their business. I thought that was crazy, but that kind of sounds like something Apple would do. So
Yeah.
all that to say, it kind of makes sense for Apple to really not want you to type cuss words in your phone or whatever the case may be. But I think Apple's like, all right, we tripping. So
Listen,
if you
people
want to,
cussing. Let people
yeah,
cuss.
right. If you want to cuss in on the iPhone, I guess we all right. So
Yeah,
I just wanted to put that story in there because I thought that was
that's
kind of
funny.
weird. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the fact that as in any Apple News outside of the Vision Pro goggles, I mean, I
Right.
searched and searched and searched and
It's
searched,
all
and
Vision Pro. It's
it's
all
either
Vision Pro.
it's either Vision Pro or the 15-inch MacBook Air or the Mac Pro and the Mac Studio stuff. All the stuff that they announced during WWDC.
Because now
That's
people are getting their
all.
hands on it
Mhm.
and they're doing their reviews. And, hopefully next week we'll be off the Apple announcement wave. But I knew this week was going to be,
Yep.
all Apple event stuff.
And it's a little bit of beta stuff too, which, as a side story, I've all not always past 5 years or so.
Mhm.
I've been against downloading betas because you get the beta on your phone months ahead
In
of
advance.
the final release,
Mhm.
and it's buggy and it's broken and it doesn't work the right way, and they kind of get it better, but you're so used to using all of the features that by the time they announce the actual product to go out to consumers,
It's
there's
old
nothing really
news.
new. It's old news. It's nothing special. You didn't download the public version and nothing's changed, right? For the most
Mhm.
part. So it's, to me, that was kind of a letdown. So for the past 5 years or so, I've kind of shied away from installing the developer betas or the public betas.
Mhm.
Apple in the past 5 years, I think 3 to 5 years, announced public betas to where, as the public, you don't have to have a
Public
developer
testers.
account. You don't have to pay, for a dev account or anything like that. You can download the public beta and kind of, like you said, public testers, and you kind of test give Apple a sort of what do you call it? The there's a load load
Load
load.
balancing? Is that
Yes,
what you're talking about? Okay.
I guess load balancing, to where if a bunch of people have the public beta, they can Apple can kind of see how much additional resources they need to put for,
They
extra
can get performance
servers,
metrics.
performance metrics and load balancing, right? They can kind of get
Yeah.
that nailed in before they announce the public one, right? So
Yeah.
all that to say, I've kind of shied away from doing it, but there are a whole bunch of iOS 17 features that I really, really want to try and really, really want to try now.
You
And
don't wanna wait.
I'm not really sure if I'm going to wait. So the
Mhm.
developer beta is out now, I think, and then the public beta will be sometime in July.
Mhm.
And there's a bunch of features like the contact name drop thing,
Mhm.
and the ability to share iCloud passwords with your family, and a bunch of other features. Just like, man, I
Mhm.
really want to try those. I don't know if I want to wait until September, October. So, but all that to say, that's all anybody's been talking about. So it's really kind of hard to find Apple stories, but we are Apple podcast, so we do want to make sure we get that content at the very least.
Absolutely.
All right, so enough of that. Let's move into second string, where we talk all things tech. It seems like Apple, or not Apple, excuse me, YouTube really wants more people to make money on its platform, which in turn will make them more money. So it seems like the YouTube Partner Program, which you have to reach a certain amount of subscribers, reach a certain amount of followers, certain amount of views. You have to kind of meet those criteria in order to be a part of the YouTube Partner Program, which will enable you to monetize your YouTube channel. It seems like YouTube has decided to um, cut some of those eligibility requirements. Reading this story from the Verge, it says the company announced today it is lowering the eligibility requirements for the YouTube Partner Program and opening up a handful of monetization methods to smaller creators, including paid chat, tipping, channel memberships, and shopping features. Under the new eligibility policy, the YouTube Partner Program will be open to creators once they reach 500 subscribers, half the number that YouTube previously had. Other benchmarks are changing too. Participating creators will need 3,000 valid watch hours instead of 4,000, or 3 million shorts views compared to the original 10 million. Lower requirements will initially roll out in US, UK, Canada, Taiwan, and South Korea. Of course, smaller creators still need to grow their footprint to cash in, with YouTube saying the existing partner requirements will remain for revenue sharing. Company notes creators won't have to reapply for the program once they hit high requirements. So basically, if you are a little bit of a smaller, it ain't drastic. As I was reading some of the stories, it said
Mhm.
3,000 watch hours instead of 4,000. I'm like,
Mhm.
1,000, you know,
And the
um,
subscribers, I think, went down to 500. It was 1,000
versus a
before.
thousand. It's like,
Yeah, so it's not huge changes. I mean,
uh-huh.
it'll probably help some people. You're like, I think what they're called micro influencers. So they
Hmm.
don't have like the super huge accounts, but they do have a following. So, I guess it's good so that,
And
everybody can get in on the monetization.
well, in addition to that, people looking at making money off of YouTube as this daunting task, right?
Mhm.
Because to me, it's daunting. Just
Mhm.
just running, our
Our
YouTube
show.
channel
Yeah.
and being responsible for other YouTube channels. All of the, for example, all of the things you have to do just to put up a video. You gotta have thumbnails and you gotta
Mhm.
have chapters and you gotta have SEO. It's like running a website,
Yeah.
right? And I get it. You got to put in the work to make the money, but at the same time, it's like to me, you are more so focused on making sure the content looks well, to make sure the content is uh, approved by YouTube versus making dope content, right?
Right.
The whole point is to make dope content. And in turn, enough people will watch it and then you can make some money versus
Mhm.
trying to fit your content into YouTube's box. That kind of takes away from the fun of making
Yeah.
the content in the first place, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right. So looking at some of these requirements, specifically the shorts, because I personally have a YouTube channel, but I am not active at all as much as I used to be because of those reasons. You got to
Mhm.
format everything. It's got to be in the right. All these things, all these check boxes in order to just upload a video
It's a lot of
versus
work.
right versus the shorts. It's almost like an Instagram reel,
Mhm.
even though those can be complex as well. To me, to be able to put up a quick 60-second short video kind of cuts down on the amount of things in my mind I feel like I have to do, which would compel me to put more content if I could
Mhm.
just do a short. And if according to the, reduced watch hours on the shorts, that may just propel somebody like me that's been doing YouTube, but don't want to do it the way I used to do it, but
Right.
still want to make sure I put content out there, being able to put together a quick 60-second short and know that I only need these many watch hours instead of what everybody else is doing, that may propel me to actually put out more content. So
Yeah.
even though the changes are, minimal compared to, you know, um, what they've been doing, I could see somebody looking at this. All right, now there's a chance. All
Yeah. For sure.
right, moving on to the next story. Elon Musk, a couple of months ago, I want to say,
Mhm.
finally decided that, hey, maybe I need to actually get somebody with some sense in here to run Twitter. He announced maybe a couple weeks ago, maybe about a month or two ago, Linda, and I'm about to torch her last name,
Sorry, Linda girl.
Linda Yaccarino.
We're gonna go
Linda
with that.
Yaccarino, yeah, announced Linda as the Twitter CEO, but we hadn't heard from her
Mhm.
about specifically, her, what's her reasons for taking the job, what her vision was for the job. Normally when somebody announces you as CEO or announces any CEO, that's followed immediately with a statement or press release
Mhm.
from the actual CEO. That was not the case with Twitter, because Elon Musk. But now she has finally decided to put together a couple of comments to in the form of an email to Twitter employees. Basically, it says, "Hello, Twitter. People keep asking me why Twitter, so I'll tell you. From space exploration, electric vehicles, Elon knew these industries need transformation, so he did it. More recently, it's become increasingly clear that the global town square, which is Twitter, needs transformation to drive civilization forward through the unfiltered exchange of information and open dialogue about the things that matter most to us, blah, 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 blah. Um, when you start by unwrapping your arms around this powerful vision, literally everything is possible. You have to generally believe and work hard for that belief. And in this moment of complete reinvention, we have the opportunity to reach across aisles, create new partnerships, celebrate new voices, and build something together that can change the world. And what I can tell you so far, you're built for this. The success of Twitter 2.0 is what she calls it. It's all our responsibility. We need to think big. We need to transform. We need to do it all together. That's exactly why I'm here with all of you. So let's dig in our heels and build Twitter 2.0 together, Linda. So it really wasn't a lot in there. I just kind of skipped some of it, but
Yeah.
it's kind of fluffy. But the fact that we do have something is news in and of itself. Because, like I mentioned, this was announced at least 2 months ago that she was going to be CEO, even after weeks and months of the news came out that Elon was considering getting somebody
Yeah.
to run Twitter. So it's kind of surprising that it took this long for her to actually put out some sort of comment.
Yeah, and honestly, they could have kept this because what I got from this is that she's completely in lockstep with what Elon wants to do, especially
Hmm.
when she talks about the drive civilization forward through the unfiltered exchange
Right.
of information and open dialogue on things
Right.
that matter to us most. So, yeah, girl, you're on board with whatever he's doing. What he did was bring in someone, she's a previous advertising exec, leading sales for NBC Universal. So he brought someone in as
They can bring the
CEO
money in.
to
Hmm.
bring the money in. And he's still going to run the product
Hmm.
and engineering side of the house. And he's going to run product and engineering. She's going to do everything else. So he's
Right.
still going to continue with this app in the hellscape that it is. Her job is to make him money.
Hmm.
And if she doesn't come through, girlfriend's getting the boot in the ear. If
Hmm.
she doesn't get this money right,
Hmm.
he's given her, I'm sure, a very short runway.
Right.
And
Right.
we know that he isn't the most adept guy when it comes to gender relations.
Hmm.
So I think he's trying to make it look good by
Hmm.
hiring a woman and a woman who, you know, had an executive role. So she has the qualifications for sure to do the job. But I think he has his list of check boxes of things that he's trying to do. But like I said, if in a year she
Hmm.
doesn't, I mean, I'm saying a
You say
year, but I don't think
yeah.
it was a year. I'm thinking
Right.
maybe 6 months. If
I was going
she
to say by the end of the year.
and that's about 6 months.
Hmm.
If she doesn't, show a significant increase in revenue money, oh, girlfriend, you can kick to the curb. And now you
Yeah.
have the stench of Twitter and Elon all over you, um, you know, once you get the boot.
Or on that fact, will it be stench? Because everybody knows all the things you just said about Twitter, right? I
Mhm.
mean, Elon, not Twitter. Elon. They know, we all know that he's a narcissist, he's an egomaniac, and he is throwing stuff at the wall to get Twitter profitable because he put his foot in his mouth
Mhm.
and bought Twitter at this exorbitant
Ego again.
amount anyway. He's got all this ego. So we know all of that about Elon, right?
Mhm.
So for Elon to turn around and hire her, we know what all the things you just said, that he needed a woman because he doesn't come off as, equality as it relates to gender. We know all of these things. We know he's strapped for cash as far as Twitter, and she's a sales exec in advertising, so she has the relationships with all of the advertisers per her previous job. We know all of that, right? So let's just say 6 months from now they part ways. Will it be stench if we kind of know that going in, dude, this was a opportunistic move, and for her, she looked at it as a cash grab in her own right. So it's almost like, all right, well, you get the bag because you may not be there very long. I'm curious as to if she looked at it that way. It's like, all right, well, if you're gonna give me a whole bunch of money to just sit around and not do nothing for 6 months because you're gonna fire me anyway, shoot, I might as well just take the job and take the money. Because that's
Get
what I
this
would do.
cash grab real quick.
Because that's what I would do if I was working for somebody who really didn't rock with people like that, but they needed to use me, quote unquote, air quotes, kind of use me to, you know, um, ease over some previous stuff that he did. Hey,
Mhm.
I ain't gonna go all full Uncle Tom, but at the same time,
What
you
that
know,
check looking like?
right. I may use you at the same way you using me, and now I got Twitter on my resume, right? Not necessarily Elon Musk. I got Twitter on my resume,
Mhm.
so that may bump me up for opportunities going forward. So I think it was kind of both sides recognizing the game, and
Mhm.
this is just a straight up move, and we'll see
Yeah.
if it work. She's the greatest thing since sliced bread. If it don't
Yeah.
work, we all knew Elon was a jerk anyway.
Yep.
All right, so last
Absolutely.
story I had in second string is the electric vehicle wars continue, or is it actually electric vehicle wars if the teams are starting to work with each other? Specifically, General Motors announces it's going to use Tesla's electric vehicle charging network going forward. Maybe it was just the public, maybe it was GM versus Tesla specifically, actually, but I think we kind of all kind of put Tesla as the newcomer up against these titans of automotive industry that is
Mhm.
GM and Ford and Dodge and Chrysler and all these other companies. And we kind of figured or assumed that they were going to be battling
Mhm.
for electric vehicle supremacy. So for the fact that General Motors following Ford to announce that they're going to use Tesla's fast charging network in a new partnership, are they really at heads, at odds against each other? Or is everybody kind of moving towards the same goal of being electric vehicles as the future? Or it's just, what this announcement, what do you take from this announcement?
What I take from this is the fact that, again, this is a win-win-win type of situation,
Mm-hmm.
because some of these powerhouses, like you mentioned, Ford and GM, are headstrong, you know, full steam ahead on EVs. Tesla is already there. They already
Mm-hmm.
have the infrastructure
Mm-hmm.
for charging stations around the country. So, is it smarter to basically quasi adopt the Tesla charging port as the standard, because the infrastructure is already there? So
Mm-hmm.
this relieves Ford, GM, anybody else who decides to use Tesla's chargers. They don't have to worry about creating, developing, funding
Mm-hmm.
charging stations around the country. They can
Mm-hmm.
utilize what's there. Tesla gets the boost because obviously Ford and GM are going to pay, say,
Right.
a licensing fee to
Mm-hmm.
use these charging ports. So
Mm-hmm.
then Tesla wins. And
Right.
then at the end of the day, the customer is going to win because they're already going to be able to use something that's widely available, that's already well known, and they know how it works because everybody knows how the fast charging stations on Teslas work and how well they work. So
Mm-hmm.
again, it's another win-win-win type of situation where all the people involved win. And again, at the end of the day, it's all about money. It's all
And the
about the money.
and the people on the outside lose, right? So you think of
Oh yeah.
EV,
If you're not in the
some
bubble, then
right, because the story also mentions that rival EV companies tumbled on Friday as far as stock value after the announcement, with names like EVgo, ChargePoint, and Blink Charging all sliding between 11 and 13% shortly following an announcement. Now, of course, I'm pretty sure those numbers are creep back up,
mhm,
but the fact that General Motors and Ford kind of have decided that amongst
this is what we're
all
gonna
the
do.
different, right, as far as all the different charging options out there, Tesla is the clear winner. So we're just gonna hook our cars literally to
Mhm.
Tesla, to kind of make them the aforementioned leader as far as charging. That kind of puts some of these other companies in kind of a bind. It's like, what do we do to
Yeah.
compete against Tesla if not only Tesla, but also Ford and now GM are all kind of partnering up? So it'll be interesting to see what some of these other companies do, and some of these other car manufacturers, like you
They're
still
gonna
got
have to
Doc.
go and
Hmm.
partner. There,
Right.
that's the only way that these other EV charging companies, they're gonna have to seek out partnerships um with other car manufacturers to
Hmm.
kind of head off the headwinds. And the only other thing I can see that could thwart this is if the government comes out with a federally regulated charging port
Which
that
ain't gonna happen.
which everybody has to use. And again, that's not likely. So the only thing, the pivot for these other
Hmm.
companies is they are going to have to go now and, like I said, seek
Hmm.
out partnerships with other companies. And the thing with that is everybody's on the EV wave. So pretty much all the car manufacturers are in development for an electric vehicle.
Hmm.
And at this stage in the game, you got to get in pretty early because
Hmm.
engineers are designing it. They're
Hmm.
looking at materials, they're doing the cost analysis. So if you're not in already, you're going to have to pivot to change your product to
Which,
fit
hmm
what these car companies are doing.
which you made a good point to where it's going to be good for the consumer because, some of these other names, they're going to have to step up their game and
Hmm.
develop and add more charging stations and make more available, because you kind of mentioned with the Tesla, you can quickly identify a Tesla charging
Brand
point
awareness.
just soon as you roll up on it, right? Versus some of these other chargers, you don't know which one that is until you actually pull your car up and then try to charge your car to kind of figure out, all right, is this the right one or not? Versus you pull
And
up to a Tesla, you know exactly which one. So these companies are going to have to step their game up because, um, just in my neighborhood, there's a excuse me, there's a shopping area, and they recently added, like, I want to say like 12 to 16 Tesla charging points,
mhm,
stations,
mhm,
right? The only company I've seen that adds multiple charging ports at one time is Tesla. All these
mhm,
other companies, they'll put one, maybe two, and maybe half of the time that one may not be working. So one is broke. And then
mhm,
you got another car parked at the one that's working. So you
mhm,
got to wait 10 to 20 minutes or however many long before they charge up. And then you can pull in, versus Tesla. Like, I mean, they have a whole like little bank,
mhm.
of charging points. So these companies are going to have to recognize that, all right, we got to step our game up. So that means more and more charging points, which is better for the consumer all around.
And trustworthiness. People are fairly confident that if they pull up to a Tesla charging station, that they aren't going to have any issues with some of these more unknown charging companies. Quality is going to come into play. Is this going to be a good, device to use to plug
Experience.
up to my
Right.
car? Is
Right.
my experience going to be easy? Am I just going to be able to plug in and, not worry about it? Or am I going to have to kind of like stand there and kind of like wait to see if things are going the way it should when you already know that Tesla's, 9 times out of 10, the charging stations are going to be on par.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. All right. So that's going to be it for second string. We're going to move into For the Culture, where we talk all things tech from a social media or a social standpoint. And of course, we always can find one. um,
Absolutely.
Specifically Canva. For those who don't know what Canva is, it's a free to use tool that enables you to make things like YouTube thumbnails and Facebook headers
Imitation
and
graphics.
right graphics. Specifically, most people use it for like social media graphics, like
Mhm,
if you're making a reel on Instagram, whether you're making a Facebook header, whether you're making a Twitter profile header. Specifically, I use it all the time for making YouTube thumbnails.
mhm,
That is the go-to free source for online graphics.
mhm,
And it seems like, with this advancement of AI and all of these image generators to enable you to just type in some prompts and create all of these images, it seems like Canva is still kind of lacking when it comes to the culture part, because recently they came under fire after a DEI thought partner, uh, Adriel Parker, prompted its text to image app to generate a black woman with Bantu knots. So in the prompt, she types black woman with Bantu knots. And for those who don't know, Bantu knots are a specific hairstyle specifically to black women,
Mm-hmm.
to where that's something that's within the black women's hairstyle arsenal, right?
Yep.
And according to Canva, they was like, nah.
Mm-mm.
Specifically, the error that popped up after she typed in black woman with Bantu knots, Canva told her Bantu may result in unsafe or offensive content. Of course, homegirl Adriel Parker went to LinkedIn and says, "Tell me your AI team doesn't have any black women without telling me your AI team it doesn't have any black women." My goodness, Canva, if you need a DEI consultant, give me a shout. I've been a fan of your platform for some time, but this is not it. Be the change, please. And then she does a screenshot of the actual prompt that she puts into Canva, and then the error message, like I mentioned, Bantu may result in unsafe or offensive comment,
Mm-hmm.
rephrase, or try again. So this kind of goes to the whole thing that even though it's AI, it has to be trained based on our input and our information that we give Canva. So for whatever reason, Canva decided to skip the section to where they gave Canva the prompts for black women's hairstyles. And not only did they skip that part to where they flagged it as offensive
It's
content.
unsafe and
It's
offensive.
one thing for her to put black women with Bantu knots and Canva say, we can't find any, we were unable to generate the content due to
Mm-hmm.
whatever the case may be,
Mm-hmm.
rephrase or try again. For Canva to say this may result in unsafe and offensive content, rephrase, that means somebody trained it, in my
To say
opinion,
that. Yeah.
and trained it to exclude or categorize Bantu, the word Bantu or Bantu knots, as unsafe content. So, as the resident black woman of the Snobbo S cast with black women hairstyles, what is your take on Canva and their oops as it relates to black women's hairstyles?
As well as an AI professional. So,
Okay, right. Add
uh,
that to the list. Yeah.
so again, this data was trained because of all the words that are on the screen. There are 5 words. It singles out Bantu.
Hmm.
So AI, the model had to know that Bantu was not a good word.
Hmm.
It just didn't come out of thin air.
Right.
And, as a person who works in AI, one of the things that is key to me and key to how I go about the work that I do is that I make sure I try to take my human experience and add that to the conversation,
Okay.
because it's very easy. It's not right, it's not fair, but it's very easy for people not to include experiences of Black people, Indigenous people, marginalized people, because they don't have the knowledge base for it. In some
Mhm.
instances, it may be intentional, but I would like to think in most of those cases, it's not. It's just the
It's
lack of
ignorance.
knowledge, it's
Mhm.
ignorance. And when you don't hire a diverse workforce, a diverse group, or put diverse people in these rooms, in these conversations, in this work, this is what you get. This is what
Mhm.
happens. As we talked about earlier in the lowdown, we talked about the DE&I initiative that Apple is
Apple.
doing. They are they're specifically going to HBCUs. They are
Mhm.
specifically going into certain communities to build talent,
Mhm.
because it is such a lack of talent. I am full time on my team. I am the only Black woman on my team.
Mhm.
I am the only in my group, I am the only Black woman who is a lead. Nope, I lied. There's another one. She's not directly in my group, but
Mhm.
she's kind of in the same org. But it's one of those things where we are so few and so are far in between. And now that I think about it, on my Scrum team, I, aside from the person who is, kind of part time to help on this work, the allocation is split. She and I are the only Black people in that Scrum. And the Scrum is basically the team that does a specific type of work or works on a specific part of the product.
Mhm.
And it's one of those things where if you don't have that representation, if you don't have it, you just don't. You
You'll miss
don't get
stuff
this
like this.
experience. Yeah.
Mhm. 'Cause
And
this
it's and
is
it's
very 'cause this is very specific to Black women. Very
exactly.
specific. It ain't specific to women. It ain't specific to women who went to college. It ain't specific to women who went to a particular field in college. This is specific. Bantu knots are specific to Black women in America. And for the
Black
fact
women all over the world, because I think it started, of course, where everything start, on the continent, because
Mhm,
it is an African style. Just think, if you take a
mhm,
ponytail and twist it and just wrap it around, and it makes like a little, almost like a little mini volcano, if is a way to
mhm.
kind of think
Mini
about the
Afro
shape.
puff.
Yeah.
A bunch of 'em.
Yeah, and it's kind of like
Uh-huh.
all, over. So it's one of those things that it is very specific to Black women. And
Mhm.
again, as what was her name? Adrian
Let me go back. Her name was Adrielle
Adrielle
Parker.
Parker. As
Yeah.
she said in her note, tell me your AI team doesn't have any Black women without telling me your AI team
Mhm,
doesn't have any Black women. Because if you had Black women in this, yeah, we would have had Bantu knots. We would have had two
mhm,
strand twists. We would have had
mhm,
cornrows. We would have had braids. We would have had locks. We would have ensured that all of the things that go into this would have been included. And again, if you don't have the knowledge base, then you can't put that in there, right? So if you don't have the knowledge base, then things like this is going to happen. And it's one of those things that's, as old as time is, you have to include all experience, because this country is, I mean, honestly, I'm sure people around the world use Canva. The
mhm,
default around the world is whiteness. And
mhm.
people can get upset or feel a way about it, but that's the way it
That's just
is.
what it
That's the
is.
truth.
Yep,
That's
yep.
it is what it is. And when the
Mhm,
default is so stark to one group of people, it leaves a whole slew of people. I'm sure there are hairstyles that are specific to Asian folks,
mhm,
Latin America, Hispanic
mhm,
folks, indigenous folks, and they very well could type this prompt with whatever their specific is. And
mhm.
I don't know if they'll get unsafe or offensive, but that's bad. But just
It'll
to
be
not
limited
it,
if
yeah,
it
it'll be even
non-existent.
worse. It will be
Mhm,
even, it's just as bad to me that if this would have said, image not found, or I don't know what this is, it would
mhm,
be, almost as bad, because you're saying you're not taking into account the experience of a group of people.
mhm. Yeah. And, representation matters, right?
Absolutely.
So, imagine, if you will, I don't know what type of hairstyle, a white woman will put in here.
Adele
Imagine
had
if
Bantu knots.
Well, I'm just saying, imagine a white woman putting in a hairstyle particular to them
Hmm.
into Canva and it not showing up. I
Hellfire would rain down on us all.
It's almost impossible to imagine because
Yeah.
representation is so important. So the people who are training AI, the people who are putting these systems together, make sure that they are represented because that is something unique and specific to them.
Yeah.
I cannot code Canva to come up with hairstyles for white women because
Yeah.
I'm not a white woman. Now,
Right.
if I was coding Canva's AI to put fades, I could give you all the type of fades, and I would make
Yeah.
sure to put that in there because that is my experience.
Your
So,
undercuts, all your different types of undercuts will be
right,
up in there too.
all that, because that is my experience. And
Yeah.
even if I stick with a temp fade
Mhm.
and there's all these new styles out there for brothers, as a to make sure representation is there, I'm going to do the research
Yeah.
to find all of that and make sure that's represented. So
Yeah.
it is, it makes perfect sense for me that representation, as far as the majority, is always represented because they are the ones doing all the they are the ones behind the scenes building all of this. So of course it makes perfect sense that they are represented, so they
Mhm.
don't understand when we, marginalized, underrepresented culture say, hey, what about us? They're like, I don't understand.
And the funny
this
thing
is the
is,
this is the norm. Why are
yeah,
you tripping?
the funny thing is, maybe about a month or so ago, um, I was out with some friends and we were talking, about, our experiences in working in the fields that we work in. And the phrase representation matters came up. And one of the friends that I was with, who is non-black and non-POC, she was
Mhm.
like, I don't really believe in the whole representation matters um uh context, because, and she pointed to me, she was like, you didn't have to see a black woman in tech
Get into tech.
to get into tech.
Mhm.
And technically, I didn't, but that's not the case for everybody, because I
Mhm.
had a family that was like, whatever it is you want to be, you can be it. And
Mhm.
if we don't know how to
We'll
do it,
figure it out.
we'll figure it out. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, a lot of people don't have that. And people who have never really had things not cater to them,
And not
they
had that
can't under
experience.
not had it, so can't really fully
Guide you.
grasp
Mhm.
what representation matters means, because you've always been represented. You've
Right.
always been centered. So I don't think there was any malice behind her statement. It's just that she's never
She is
had to experience that.
because she is so privileged to where that is the default. Her experience is the default. When your experience is the default, you have a tough time, not
Yeah.
like you said, not without any malice,
Mhm.
not with any hate or specific direction towards that.
Mhm.
Your experience is the default, so you can't understand. You can't. It's hard for you to relate to
Mhm.
somebody whose their experience is not the
Right.
default.
Right.
So specifically, like you're saying, her example was you didn't have to see any black women in tech to decide that you were going to go into tech. Yeah, that may be the case for you specifically, but I guarantee there are a bunch of
Yeah.
mothers and fathers who are raising their kids. You better go into the NBA. You better go
Mhm.
into the NFL. You better get that sports scholarship because that's all they know. So you
And
got a bunch of
I would have loved to seen, black women in tech when I was coming up. Even though
Mhm.
I didn't need it, it would have been a nice to have.
Yeah, and there's the same thing with the brothers, young kids trying to get their sons to get into the league.
Mhm.
Same thing, I'm pretty sure with black women, but you better start that, get that hair salon, you better get
Mhm.
that, the things that they experience, the things that
Mhm.
they are used
They
to
see. Yeah.
is the things that they see is what they're going to direct their
It
kids.
informs
And
their decisions on everything.
exactly. So, we in tech as black folks are the anomaly from most of our parents telling us, you just graduate from high school and and that's good enough for me, right? You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So, yeah, again, it all goes to representation, to the fact to where, going back to this story, if there was more representation in Canva, this would have been a non-issue. But
Mhm.
something as simple like this is yet another example of why representation matters.
Mhm. Absolutely.
All right. So that is it for the culture. No hookup for the week. I couldn't come up with anything, like I said, because everything is so inundated with Apple
Yeah.
post WWDC news. I was searching so hard to try to find some tech news that I forgot to rack my brain to come up with a tip. So no tip for this week. So I think that is going to do it. Nica, if you don't have anything else,
Nope.
tell the folks where they can find you.
You can find me at Tech Savvy Diva on all of your social media platforms.
And you can find me at Brother Tech, BROTHATECH. And you can follow the Snob OS show if you want all the information about where we post, if you want to find our social media handles, if you want to give us a shout out, please go to snoboscast.com. Like I said, you can get the latest episodes. You can find out how to support us. Again, you can find out how you can support us financially. Like I said, it keeps the lights on. We greatly appreciate it. But you can do all that by going to our website. Again, snoboscast.com. And until next week, we are out. Peace.
Bye, everybody.